Hello, I'm Ann Gannon. Today I am joined by Christina Black and Keita Patel, two of our senior accountants here at the Lager Group, and we're going to discuss our trip to the 2024 New York Restaurant Show.
Yeah.
So we had an adventure getting back and forth in New York in one day because it is tax season. But overall, it was really cool,
trip.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
It was your first trips to the show.
Yes.
So what was your overall, I guess, opinion of going to the New York show for the first time?
I think it was very, very informative for anybody who is in the restaurant industry because they had a bunch of vendors from software POS to packaging to products, the new stuff that's coming up in the 2024 to look out for. So it's a pretty cool experience to see it on the other side of the industry.
Yes. And I mean, I think for those of us who've been around for a while, especially the independents, we, sort of always got used to going to the New York show. And then obviously COVID happened. I remember being at the show in 2020 as the world was ending. So to me, it was great to see it back. The energy, how many people were there. Christina, what did you think about the size of the show?
It was massive. Like there were just rows and rows of vendors. Some had snacks for us. Some were educational, especially with the softwares, like Ankita had said, but also just like paper and packaging and like the small wares and everything like that they had. Interchangeable. It was crazy.
Yeah. Well, and I think one other thing is, we've all got so used to Zoom and, just being remote, but it was really cool, like some of the conversations that just came up walking the floor. So I would say from someone who probably never appreciated walking the floor prior to COVID, it was like just nice to be there and really interact with the vendors and learn a lot. So I think one of the things that, for those of us who weren't able to go, I would say there were three main takeaways that we found, right? Yes. First, obviously, was technology. That was everywhere. But Christina, talk about the one really cool technology that we saw.
So there's this one startup. It's called Tave. They basically work with larger corporations and they cut the commercial time. So they give you, I believe it was about 20% of the slot for every commercial time to post your specials, things that you have. It was just so cool.
Yeah, and basically there was no cost to the operator, but they
actually pay you.
They pay you, and they take over your commercial. So you don't do anything. You just allow them to come in, but then every commercial that's shown is something that's compatible with what you're doing. Like, you're not going to see Burger King if you sell burgers. You're going to see like Budweiser or Pepsi or something like that. So it was really interesting. They're very much in startup phase, but definitely got our attention. I think the other technology thing we saw a lot of, which is something that we all really talk to a lot, is the idea of menu boards.
Yes.
That I think there were, several companies that seemed to do it really well. Several that also did the design element, which I was surprising. Yeah. I didn't realize that was a thing.
Right. Yeah.
I thought you had to go to them and be like, this is how I want it. Just put it on a board.
But no, they do a lot, and they kind of know that you need help with that. So definitely seemed more already done for you. And also the price didn't seem as bad as we would have thought.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then I think the other thing there were a couple that even rented some of the equipment. So definitely seemed like those in hospitality are aware of trying to work with you on upfront costs, but really kind of drilling in the fact that I think most consumers prefer a menu board. Even if it's kind of an old school establishment, it's just getting used to the next generation. And I think that was the other, interesting thing about being back on the floor after, I did not go last year. And the 2 years prior were just very, very slow for obvious reasons, being New York City. But what was interesting is I think one of the takeaways that everyone was talking about is the fact that we have a new generation. That the kids that, especially most of the people who are out at the bars or the younger generation, they really weren't part of COVID, right? They were probably in college at the time. So while the rest of us are sort of remembering and sort of getting back to normal, they're creating their own normal.
Yeah.
So it's almost like sped up the transition to this next generation. And what was interesting is after we went to the show, we all went to dinner and sort of witnessed that firsthand, right? It
Yes.
was seeing that like everyone who's in this bar and they're 25, they don't care. Right? They are so past it, but they probably have different tastes, different ordering patterns, different expectation because they've really moved on. And it sort of reminded me, for those of us old enough to remember, of 9/11, where you had like the people who had to get back to normal after 9/11, but the way that we did it was the generation after didn't care.
Yep.
So it was interesting to see because I think that was also one of the things that was brought up a lot in the show, which got me to the next part, which was the packaging. What was interesting is I remember, I've gone to these shows for a long time. There's always been packaging. But I would say 9 out of 10 of the packaging had something to do with sustainability, which
Yep.
was interesting.
Yep, wood
Yeah.
packaging, everything biodegradable packaging. Yeah, absolutely.
And even the one we saw for the catering, where it was like all wood,
Yeah.
which was really cool, but also affordable. Like I think
Yes.
they're also realizing that you want to do sustainable packaging. Your customers are probably demanding sustainable packaging, but they're trying to keep the cost down.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and I also liked they showed like different ways that you can use the wood for like catering. It had like a little Easter one
Yeah.
or just like regular cookies and everything.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, thinking about as we talk about this next generation, probably being more and more of your customer base, they like the visual appearance. They like there being a reason for everything. It's not just like, here's a plastic dish, right? But they want it to be very nice.
Very presentable.
Yes.
Yes.
So yeah, lots of paper, lots of, biodegradable. One was made out of like sugar cane.
Yeah, sugar cane.
Yes.
But it looked like plastic. So, again, if you're not thinking about this, I mean, this is one of the main reasons why I think as people in hospitality, we should always be educating ourselves, always looking for what's new, what are people doing, because it's coming from somewhere. And I think one of the big things we saw is it's probably coming from the consumers and now getting offered to you. So if you're an independent, it's something that we have to do ourselves, right? No one's going to come in and say, oh, you should switch all of your, to-go packaging to biodegradable. But probably some of your customers are starting to want that.
Right.
Right.
So by being at a show, by interacting, right, not just being on Zoom, I think you're able to have some of those conversations and see that some of these things are not so far away from something that you could do.
And even like being there in person, like you got to touch them and like feel
Yeah.
them and see like how sturdy they were and everything like that.
Yeah, and they really were. It was very nice.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I think the third element, right? So we had our technology, the AI was everywhere. There was one that like the AI would like answer your phones. I mean,
Right.
very, very interesting. Then we had our paper product, our sustainability, the green. I think that was, really important and definitely an element. And then I think the third was the idea of helping you to offer things that you maybe couldn't do 10 years ago. So you had like your almost compartmentalized pizza guy where the pizza was amazing. It
So
tasted
good.
like
So
brick
good,
oven
yes.
pizza, but it was from like almost something that looked like a microwave.
Tabletop oven, yes.
And then you had the roll lady who
Yeah.
like ships you rolls, but they like taste like you have a bakery, but
yes.
they're
They
not.
were so good too.
So
Yeah,
good
they're so
and
good.
affordable.
Yes.
And then you had the ice cream,
Yes.
right?
And the waffle.
And waffles.
The waffle
the
maker.
waffle.
So again, I think remembering that like some of these things could be little add-ons that don't take a lot of your time. They can come pretty well prepared already, but still have that same taste of fresh to
yes.
the consumer. Yeah, and I think even people thinking about oh, I don't know if I really need to do anything on ice cream, let's say, I just already offer ice cream. I think it's, again, remembering you have a new generation that doesn't want just ice cream. They want gelato.
Gelato,
right?
yeah.
So you could have a little gelato stand. But it was cool because they did, custom made
The ice.
the molds.
the molds, right?
Yes.
So if you're having an event, you could actually, which we came up with, we thought was cool for catering, if you were doing like a wedding.
Then you can have your date like
Yes.
theme and have a mold out of it.
Which really was not that expensive.
No. Yes.
And I think those are the things that just get you to think a little differently. The other one, again, not to harp on it, but going back to the next generation, was there was a company that did the wine but make it taste like spirits.
Yes.
Yes.
So if you only have a wine license and you find that people aren't coming because they really want that mixed drink, there was a company that actually had something that's a wine license but tasted like a mixed drink.
Like, oh,
Exactly.
yep.
Yeah. So I guess, those are some of the big takeaways for me. I think now having gone, right, now that in looking at sort of the next few months, where do you think people should focus their attention?
I feel like the AI technology is big. You don't want to miss that phone call for a customer calling you. So AI is the next generation, I feel like.
And you don't want to rely on like your hourly staff that could get the information wrong.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. And that's where I think, again, kind of transitioning, we're 4 years post-COVID, which is kind of hard to believe. It seemed like there was less of a conversation of a bad labor force, or I think people were just like, well, you have a robot who's not going to deliver your food, and you have an AI who's going to answer your phone. So we're just moving on. Right? We've let that go. Yeah, but the robot was pretty cool.
Yeah, that's
Yes.
pretty cool.
I hadn't seen it before, so I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah. So, reach out to us if you have any questions. We got all of this information. And, hopefully as we continue to talk to people, we'll bring up, some of these things. But I think it's really thinking about, obviously you can't do all of this at once, but I think there's definitely some ways to move the needle in revenue for some of these little ideas, like looking at the dessert options. Gelato, it was really affordable. It came so fresh. It had that gelato taste. Not a huge cost. Right? Probably something that you could do for maybe under $1,000 as a test. And maybe it's something you could do as a limited time offer, but just something that's completely different. And we're getting into the summer months, and they literally did molds where you could do your logo in like an ice cream mold, which was just really cool. And then, I think thinking sustainability, right? Like, rather than just waiting for it to happen or waiting for your town to have the mandatory paper bag or whatever it is, getting ahead of it and saying like, we're going to choose to do sustainability. We're going to have this affordable option to keep our consumers happy. And then, like you said, technology, look at, could I do one thing in technology this year? Maybe it's not everything, but just to move forward in that direction, because that's where we know things are going.
Yes.
All right. So stay tuned. We're also going to be hitting up a few other shows this year. So stay tuned. We'd love to meet you, right? Meet in person and move forward together in 2024.